again, if I may have your attention. We've got some talking going on. Maybe Chris will sign off.
They said we need 2 more. Okay. They're coming to set up. Okay.
If I may once again have your attention, we'll kind of check back into the agenda, and Christy King is here with Family Time. Good afternoon, Christy, and welcome.
Hi, President Richard.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm a little late.
Not a problem.
Okay, so for birthdays, Skip Booth is celebrating his birthday on October 8th. For wedding anniversaries, Mark Borello and his wife Jacqueline are celebrating 32 years of marriage on October 7th. And for member anniversaries, Bill Trayer is celebrating 7 years with Rotary on October 7th. Crystal Brohan is celebrating 3 years with our club on October 9th and has been a part of Rotary for 11 years total. Past President Jason Burnett and Bruce Mattern are both celebrating 26 years with Rotary on October 10th. And John Cumbo is celebrating 4 years with Rotary on October 10th.
Christy, thank you very much. And Lynn Bowman, are you ready for your craft talk today? Great, thank you, and welcome.
Hello, my name is Lynn Bauman, and I'm going to do my craft talk today. My classification is manufacturing and distillery strategic planning, which isn't exactly accurate anymore. I work for supply chain of North America for Bacardi. My background is in accounting and finance, though. I have a undergraduate degree in accounting from the University of Florida, and no, I don't want to talk about the Kentucky game. I have a master's of accounting and taxation from University of North Florida, and I am a CPA in the state of Florida. However, I've never worked a day in my life in accounting. I've maintained my license for 27 years in the industry sector. I was actually interviewing for the Big Six at the time, and took a temporary job at Bacardi to help them with their budget, and they very quickly offered me a full-time job. So I started there as a staff accountant and worked my way up through the organization. I was the plant controller. For many of you know that there's a plant here in Jacksonville up on the north side. So I was the plant controller up there for 10 years. I learned a lot about manufacturing. After that, I moved into a global operations role. So I spent 7 years being the finance director for the Americas. And in that, I had 11 plants where I oversaw the finance teams in North America, South America, and Latin America. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of travel. And my boss was in Switzerland, so I was going to Europe quite a bit. And then also I was having to visit all the plants, which isn't a bad thing. I got to visit many of the Bacardi family plants around the world. So it was a very exciting time. However, at the same time, I had 2 kids who were, one was going into high school, one was going into middle school, and the travel just got to be too much. So I stepped back and went into global operations and manufacturing. And I took a project management role. And there that's where the strategic planning comes in, because I was able to implement some of the projects that I had actually come up with on the finance side. So I executed a plant closure, which I had put the business case together. I executed several sourcing changes that had, again, put the business cases together, and many efficiency projects in the Jacksonville plant. And then 2 years ago, I took a new role, which is in supply chain for North America, and they're based out of the Miami office. We had a new supply chain VP, so I moved into supply chain and help him implement some of his projects. So some of the projects that I work on now are, we are building a new warehouse up on the north side of Jacksonville, a build-to-suit building, right, that's in progress. We're expanding our foreign trade zone so that we can defer tax on product coming into the country until it leaves the trade zone. I'm working on many route to market projects in Canada with the liquor control boards up there, trying to optimize the transportation and warehousing setups up there, as well as working on a vendor managed inventory project with our national distributor, which is Southern Wine and Spirits. And so one thing I like about project management is obviously I get a lot of breadth of knowledge. I get my hands into, software, into planning, into transportation, warehousing. So it's a huge learning opportunity. I love to learn. So that's what keeps me motivated. That's how I've been able to stay at Bacardi for 27 years and keep recreating my career. I feel like I am always learning. On a personal note, I do have 2 children. Taylor is 22. She just graduated from Florida Gulf Coast University with an exercise science degree. And she's now working at Southeastern Orthopedic here in Jacksonville as a PT tech. And she is just applying right now to get into the doctoring programs to try to become a physical therapist. My son is Tanner, and he's 19. He's at St. John's River College down in Palatka. He's a baseball player, and he just committed to play at Auburn next season, so we're really excited about that. I'm going to have to change my colors of orange and blue for baseball. So you can imagine my free time is really spent. My daughter actually was a college athlete as well for 4 years. She played softball at Florida Gulf Coast. Both are pitchers. So I spend a lot of my free time watching them. I love watching them traveling around the country wherever they go. It's taken me many places. And then from a personal front, I also like sport and, outdoor activities. I like to kayak and paddleboard. I'm a 10-time finisher of the Donna half marathon. I'm going to do it again in February. I participate in the MS 150, and 2 years ago I did a 100-mile ride in one day. So that was a big accomplishment. And my latest adventure is my daughter and I just signed up to go to Peru, and we're going to hike Machu Picchu in May. So I'll take lots of great pictures and share those with that. So I like to challenge myself mentally and physically. So that's a little bit about me.
Some announcements for us today. First of all, about Rotary apparel. Rotary shirts have arrived. You know that. You probably picked them up. We'll have them, Patty says we'll have them here again next week, and we continue to take orders. Please email Patty with the type and size of shirt that you would like. I have something that is almost a membership moment today as we begin to craft those for you. I wanted to read you one of the responses that I received from our membership meeting via email after the fact. One of our members said this: I joined Rotary in the 1980s because I heard from many sources that it was the best service organization with the highest quality members in Jacksonville and in the world. I also joined because I wanted to make friends and acquaintances of top-notch people outside of the arena in which I worked. A little bit of feedback from that meeting today. A heads up for the district conference and more from B4. Please welcome B.
Asked President Richard if I could talk just a little bit to remind you about the district conference. He said it was on the schedule. It's November 5th and 6th at the Renaissance Hotel World Golf Village in St. Augustine. And it is a wonderful time for you to network and meet other Rotarians and learn about Rotary and come away inspired. You can register for it online at DAC-DV, which I've already done. But talking about being inspired, I had the opportunity this weekend to go to Naples, Florida to attend the Emerging Leadership class and reunion summit for Rotary. And I just want to share one story that was shared with everyone attending the conference from President-elect Jennifer Jones. She will be our first female Rotary International president. Woman. And so the story that she shared was when the United States was pulling out of Afghanistan, she was in her office in Evanston at Rotary International, and she got a text from a fellow Rotarian. She left names totally out of this story to protect people. And that fellow Rotarian said, there's a Rotary woman in Afghanistan and she can't get out, and her life will be in danger. What can you do to help? Well, President-elect Jennifer Jones' first reaction was her heart goes to the bottom of her stomach, and she's like, I'm just one person, what can I do? And then she remembers the power of the aunt, the power of the connections with Rotary, and started on her cell phone. And she said within minutes, her cell phone was just going. And within 48 hours, that woman was out of Afghanistan. And that's the difference that we as Rotarians.
I know somebody who lives in World Golf Village, but probably not the kind of person you'd want to drop in on. Please welcome Lori Whitmer as she explains the hows and whys of the 50/50 program that we're embarking on today.
Have brought back the 50/50 game that we're going to play today. Thank you so much. It's $100, so split 50/50. If we have a winner, you get $50. We're doing it as a fundraiser for our district grant this year. That's with Daniel's Kids. They have a $1.2 million renovation project this year. Our grant is going to be for $6,000 to provide some furniture and physical therapy for their new renovation. So we're bringing this back to raise some money, and there'll be some other stuff happening. So I am going to get our past president, B4, to draw the one ticket. Since since you brought us the game. All right, so everybody have your tickets out. Let's see who gets to draw from the deck of cards.
All right, I have 555056.
Oh, all right. All right. So draw from the deck.
Someone's sticking out a little bit further.
It is done. So now out of the deck, only 51 cards left, and this pot will grow for next week. So bring your cash for next week so we can keep raising money. Thank you.
I saw that.
You did. To introduce our visitors and guests, Charlie Cofer.
Thank you, President Richard. First of all, Miriam Funches from Downtown Rotary, thank you for coming here at Patty's request to help us with registration. Lisa Marie, you have a guest, I believe. Ed, go ahead.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes, please. I'd like to introduce everyone my special guest, Ed Vaughn, who I've been trying to get here for a while, and I'm so glad that he's here today. Ed is a naval architect and the principal at the Jean LeBay, which I found out today that his partner Andy LeBay, apparently there's many more people in this club than I know. So get him here eventually, and ironically, he is a trained archaeologist in naval architecture. So he's been a friend of mine for many years. Please welcome Ed Vaughn.
We also have another visiting Rotarian, Tom Schneider from Indianapolis. Tom and his wife have moved down here. His wife is a local, born and raised, I guess, in Jacksonville. Tom is a lawyer. But he's a lawyer for the ATO fraternity. So, okay. When he said that to me, I said, what would college kids ever need a lawyer? He really is. Anyway, Tom, thank you for joining us today, and we welcome you. Hope you will find a good club to join. And Laura, you have a guest?
Yes, I do.
All right.
I have a guest, Stephanie Baton. She's joined us a few times. She's on Zoom. She's a coworker with me at JEA. So welcome, Stephanie Baton. Her name's up there and out on camera.
Do any of our Zoom participants have any guests, or are there any visiting Rotarians? Any other guests or Rotarians I've missed? All right, well, let's welcome all of our guests. Maestro.
We here in Rotary welcome you today. So glad you came along, glad you came our way. Our fellowship is yours in sunshine or in rain. We here in Rotary say welcome, come again.
And one final comment that Lynn left out of her craft talk was the Cardis helped with the court system after COVID hit with providing hand sanitizer. And I remember picking up a couple of cases from her house, and it had that essence of sugar cane. Anyway, thank you again, Lynn.
Thank you, Charlie. And now to introduce our special guest in our program, Vicki Lynn Glover.
Good to see such a crowd. I'm sure the topic has nothing to do with it, but I really am very appreciative that Charlie Booras and Peter Booras could join us today. It's a topic that actually Patty talked about several years ago, and I really tried to get a speaker during past President B's year and really never could. Then Patty was talking to me. She's having some challenges right now with her husband's health, and she said, I went to see Charlie Booras. So when I came to Jacksonville when God was a baby, I went to St. Vincent's, and one of my responsibilities was family practice residency program. And I had that from late 1983 until 1997, early 1998. And I remember all of my residents, but especially Charlie Booras, because he was my first, he was the chief resident with Margaret McKibben, I believe. And really taught me a lot, and followed his career along the way, and was surprised and pleased to see that he was working in medical marijuana. So I know this club so well from being in this club so long, and I know different thought processes. Some of you thought, oh, reefer madness. Some of you thought Cheech and Chong. Some of you thought potato chips and chocolate chip cookies. It's not what we're going to be talking about. And so medical marijuana has really gained tremendous traction, but there is a tremendous amount of misinformation. And Charlie and Peter are experts in the field. Charlie, just in talking, I'm sure you saw in his bio, but went through a 3-year medical school program, advanced top 5% of his class, was a top resident at St. Vincent's. And together they've been working in this. And I don't really, we talked about this in a big formal presentation because I knew there'd be a ton of questions. And I said, tell us about stories. And I'll just say how I got first got interested in medical marijuana is I worked with a physician named John Simons, and he wanted to show me a film clip on his phone about a child who was his patient who was getting medical marijuana. And then it started with a disclaimer from the mom saying, I give him permission to Dr. Simons to share the story. And this was a little toddler, and he had a glioblastoma. He had a bad brain cancer. He ultimately did pass away from it. And the first several pictures of this child laying around lethargic, really, really sick. And then after medical marijuana, chasing a flatulence ball, they call it, around, making noises. And this child running around the house, just having a real good time and enjoying some life. I said, there's got to be something good to it. So I really want to give the podium over to Charlie and Peter and welcome them to our club.
We are honored to be here to talk to you folks today. I know a lot about Rotary, having been a member of Arlington Rotary in the past. And I appreciate the fact that you are all members of the oldest and most prestigious service organization on the planet. So round of applause for all of you. We are Jacksonville natives. When I started my practice 37 years ago, it was with our dad. My first partner lasted 16 years. He got to retire and enjoy years of fun and pretty good health until he developed ALS, which is now approximately 8 years ago. Peter did his homework, got on Google, and came to me and said, I've learned that cannabis can help people with ALS. And I did what any ignorant physician would do. I laughed at him, but I trust his intelligence. He's a really bright guy. So I did my own research behind him, and lo and behold, cannabis does work for ALS. I want to let Peter share some anecdotes about our experience with both mom and dad. And then I want to tell you how cannabis works in the body. So I want to make it an educational experience. Odds are I will be telling you things you don't know. And I want to dispel the myriad of misconceptions that are out there about cannabis. It doesn't deserve the bad rap that it has gotten over the years. So what did you see with Dad, first of all, with ALS?
Yeah, initially, it was in 2013 when Dad had told me that he got diagnosed with ALS. And like Charlie said, I went on and started doing my homework and seeing my first search. It's cannabis and ALS, see what comes up. Very little came up back then. A lot more comes up now that, you know, legal states have legalized medical marijuana. But he was totally against it. He did not like cannabis. He could not stand the times that he caught me with it throughout all of it. And talking him into trying it was a chore. It went on for at least 2 months before he actually even tried it. So one day with his paralyzed vocal cord, he's telling me in this raspiness that, you know, he looks up right before he's about to take a vaporizer inhale off of cannabis for the very first time, looks up and says, am I going to hallucinate? I said, no, Dad, you're not going to hallucinate. This is very calming. He took his first inhale off of that, and I recorded his voice before and after. One of the first things I saw happen after he did his first inhale of vaporized cannabis was that his vocal cord started working again. His voice was back, and I have this on recording before and after, and it was absolutely amazing. Then he got up and started walking. He was walking better. His legs were really affected in his ALS. He started walking better. And then he knew that we were on the right path. After that, this was 2013. Cannabis wasn't legal in Florida at the time. So I consulted with my brother and we talked together and I started growing medicine for him. After that, I started processing it. We made it into a tincture. He wasn't a fan of inhaling his medicine. So we made an oral tincture and started him on that. I noticed he used to freeze up. His ALS would get into where he would just stop and he couldn't go any farther. And it's pitiful looking at this man so scared someone you've looked up to this whole time, and now he's just scared because he doesn't know what's going on. Turned out that that was just the medicine wearing off. So we knew we had to keep chaining his medicine, keep it in his system. And it worked fantastic. It gave him the life that he would not have normally had with ALS. He was rapidly declining by the time he started on medicines. And after he got on it, he leveled out, and the doctors started wondering if he actually even had ALS at one point, because they were seeing he wasn't declining. They were saying he was gonna decline. Everybody said you were gonna do it, but it never did. And it was all based on those cannabis medicines. During this time, I became his daily caregiver. At 2013, I wanted to be there for his dosing, so I was his daily caregiver. During this time, about 2 years into his therapy, I noticed our mother started declining. She started having hallucinations daily, started being very combative. I looked at Dad one day and I was like, it seems like, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but I'm like, it just seems everything I've heard of early onset dementia. Had her checked out, sure enough, she had Alzheimer's. She had diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She had a brain scan where they saw amyloid plaque in there. So we were just talking, and it's like, why not? We got this medicine, let's try her on it. So we started on a half a dropper at nighttime. By that next morning, she was not hallucinating anymore and didn't hallucinate throughout the entire time. She also, her combativeness stopped, and that was overnight. Cannabis medicine seemed to work so fast that, and they're just solid. In any case, we kept on providing a dose with her daily. Her memory initially was still not there. At one point, she didn't remember me. When they were asking name family members, she didn't know me, and I was there every day. But at about the 2-year mark, all of a sudden, her memory came back, and it came back really well, and it was dramatically different, and it's kept increasing ever since. She got significantly better with her memory, which was absolutely astonishing. This whole time, we were looking, he's seeing the results of it. And as a medical doctor, these are conditions you don't see any improvement on, yet we're seeing it in both cases. That's when I started really talking to him that we could help a lot more people. I was getting people coming to me when they heard that, what we were doing with Dad, and they were asking me to help them with dosing. So since then, I've had a lot of just a myriad of different conditions and diseases that cannabis just helps with. And he's going to let you know how it helps in the body, but I've always been a fan of cannabis my entire life, but I had no idea of how much it can do, for treating some of the sickest people around. So let Dr. Booras step in and tell you how it works.
Show of hands, who has heard of the endocannabinoid system? That's typical, probably the same. If this were in a group of physicians, it would probably be about the same few on that, because I'm a complete science nerd. I have been my whole career. I love this study, whether it was back in my pharmaceutical prescribing era. I had to know what these pills were doing in the body. Same thing with cannabis. I have to know how it works. And in summary of an extremely complex phenomenon, cannabis works by activating our endocannabinoid system. That is a system that every mammal on the planet has. The endocannabinoid system functions to restore homeostasis in the body. That's defined as all physiologic systems working to their maximum potential. And a lot of conditions are actually caused by a lack of endocannabinoid production. Our body makes 2 cannabis-looking molecules. One of them, anandamide, the chemical molecular structure is very similar to THC, which has its own host of medicinal properties. The other cannabinoid is called 2AG, and it looks and functions like CBD in the body. When those endocannabinoids are of sufficient quantity, we are able to activate the endocannabinoid system, and it works very quickly. It doesn't take weeks to build up in the body. It works, like Peter said, first dose phenomenon. We always start with a lower dose and go up until we get the desired effect. But the way I look at it, I'm a believer that God created us with an endocannabinoid system, but the cannabis plant, among other medicinal plants on the earth, cannabis has over 130 cannabinoids. We call them phytocannabinoids as opposed to endo. Endo by Latin is made in the body. Phyto means it comes from a plant product, but is able to get in, activate the receptors of the endocannabinoid system, helping us heal ourselves. There's no other medicinal property of cannabis. It's letting our body do all the healing. And we are pretty darn good at being able to fix whatever is wrong. So what I want to do is give that brief presentation, and I really want to spend most of the time answering questions. Now, I've heard that y'all are a pretty shy group. I don't really want to be, asking questions that might be contentious. We're saying, bring it on. We want to know all the questions we can. You were first.
I'm asleep probably off where you left off. That system, the endo, is it common to see that system, is it track to see that system start to decline in output with things like ALS and
Yes.
dementia?
Yes, is the short answer with that. There are many, many conditions that are called a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. Those include autoimmune phenomena, things like PTSD, irritable bowel syndrome, very common conditions. And they're able in research labs to test the levels of the endocannabinoids, and they see a clear lack of production in those groups. So the thinking among those scientists that work in this industry is that these conditions are caused by the deficiency in endocannabinoid production. And they respond beautifully to cannabis and very, very quickly. Our job is even hard to call it a job because it's so much fun. We see some of the sickest people. And I thought after 36 years as a family doc, I had seen about all of it, but we have so many physicians in the community that got our memo. Send us your toughest clients, the people who are treatment resistant, they're suffering, they're heartbreaking, the things that we get to see. And I always have hope and optimism because we've seen how well the worst off people, how quickly and how well they respond. I mean, like Peter said, with Mom in my entire career, with the use of all the traditional medicines for Alzheimer's, all they do is slow down the rate of decline until the underlying burden of neuron death has reached a point that ain't nothing gonna work. And then they rapidly decline. The typical lifespan of somebody with Alzheimer's is 3 to 6 years. Mom is now approaching 6 years since her memory improved and is showing absolutely no signs of decline. Mom is not all the way back. She was a brilliant woman. I remember her knowing the words of every song she'd ever heard from the first time and knowing the color eyes of every person she'd ever met. This is Mom. Anybody familiar with Power Squadron? Dad was a sailor, and so we took the Power Squadron course, and we thought, we're doctors, man, we're bright, we're gonna nail this thing. Mom, who wasn't a sailor, wasn't really into boating because it messed up her hair. She took the course with us just so she would know more about it. Was so quiet the whole time, I thought she was lost. The scores come in, top score in the class, a 99. Mom, what the heck? I got a 96. Dad, I think got a 97. So she beat everybody and 50 people in the class. Yes, sir.
You focus on cognitive issues that
Yes, sir.
people have. There's two questions. In terms of the neurons, and is there a restoration process through the therapy, or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, other things like inflammation systems, how does it affect them?
Reduces inflammation significantly. CBD probably has a bit more anti-inflammatory properties than THC, but they both have those properties. Now, one of the things I didn't say, because I can't touch on everything, but this helps me remember, our best products include an equal amount, what we call a 1-to-1 ratio of THC with CBD. They synergistically amplify benefits in the body. We think that THC primarily interacts with the receptors, and I always talk like I'm pushing buttons on the receptors. It activates those receptors, and the CBD prolongs that activation. So it's letting the body heal itself for a longer period of time. Oral products tend to last an average of 6 hours. Inhalation products work within a couple of minutes, but they only last about an hour and a half. So a good combination is to build what we call a foundation of using an oral product regularly to keep the endocannabinoid system activated. Yes, sir.
So I grew up, I'm 41, I grew up during the DARE program. And it's just, it blows my mind. It was drilled into our brains that was, you know, the evil marijuana plant, it'll kill you. And to see what it's doing now for people, I mean, are there other things out there that are, you know, is looked down upon, but could potentially have similar effects medicinally, you know, other than cannabis? You know, there are other things out there that are being prohibited that.
That's a great question. I don't know the full answer to that because our focus has been on cannabis.
There are several, psilocybin mushrooms, for example, for depression. There's use of ketamine for PTSD. So there are, you know, and, you know, would I want to mushrooms? No, but still there are studies out there that people are doing really well with it. DMT is another one, very powerful hallucinogenic that, you know, supposedly people go under one treatment and come out without a problem again. Would I do it? No, but, you know, yeah, to answer your question, there's a lot actually that people are looking at.
They come over here. Yes, sir.
Dr. Booras, I was talking to you before the meeting about studies.
Yeah.
From academic to clinical, and you were telling me what the difficulty is with that. I wonder if you just tell the group what you told me.
Right. In addition to 36 years as a family doc, I've spent 25 years as a principal investigator of clinical protocols with the Jacksonville Center for Clinical Research, on the board of directors for probably 22 of that 25 years. In order to study a medication for its benefits, it has to be legal. Cannabis federally is not legal still. And cannabis, and this includes CBD, which makes no sense to me at all, it's a Schedule I product. That's right up there with heroin. By definition, to be Schedule I, you have to have two requirements: no medicinal properties and highly addictive. None of those apply. And yet it's stuck in that category with multiple efforts dating back to the early 70s to deschedule it so that we can study it. Would I like to see clinical research, randomized clinical trials, bunches of them with cannabis? Heck yes. Are there organizations, entities out there who don't want to step in the ring in a research protocol with cannabis? Yes, because it would hurt the bottom line if your drug shows up inferior to cannabis. And I guarantee it would. I read a ton of articles, as I mentioned, and one of the things that just sickens me, I'll read the great article. They talk about the endocannabinoid system, all the things it does in the body. And then in the conclusions, they include things like, we need to find drugs that activate the endocannabinoid system so that we can get all these benefits. And I'm like, you just told us about the drugs, cannabis, that do all of those things. It makes sense to somebody, just not to me. Yes, sir.
You're describing the chemicals that's having to come in effect from the marijuana plants.
Yes, sir.
But you also described that there are a number of plants, I thought I heard you say, that have this. Why could you not shift all of cannabis and its legal and emotional history and issues and find another plant that would have similar products or components that would get you further down the road without so many legal barriers?
Because no other plant has these medicinal properties that we know of. There are some other plants that have certain what we call terpenes, which are also constituents of marijuana. I mean, there's over 500 different chemicals in the marijuana plant. We're talking about just the major ones, the cannabinoids, but there's also flavonoids and terpenes and other chemicals that work in the body. So we have so much more research itself, not clinical trials, but just studies of cannabis showing its benefit. And most of those things that you mentioned as a barrier are really misconceptions. They're just frankly not true, most of them. Let me, Barry, I know you had your hand up as well. I'll come over to you next.
Yeah. By the way, I might add, Charlie and I go way back to when we were both building powerful bodies at much younger ages in the fitness center. He went on to successfully do that, and I was, never mind. I have a longtime friend who suffers from Parkinson's. And I see him occasionally. He doesn't live here. I see him occasionally, and I've noticed a couple of things. One, he shuffles a lot more when he walks. His voice is much lower, and you have to ask him to repeat things repeatedly. And I understand he's had a few hallucinogenic episodes. I just don't know that much about Parkinson's, but what effect does cannabis have on Parkinson's?
Dramatic. I mean, not just the symptomatology, but the studies also show a reduction in the progression of Parkinsonian deficits.
Well, if I know he goes to Mayo, comes to town and goes there to see doctors there. What's the attitude of the doctors at Mayo Clinic about your product?
Some are more accepting, but as a, let's call it a culture of Mayo, they like to say, we just don't know. And because they're like I was for so many years. We are considered, myself and most physicians, to be evidence-based, and we base our evidence on results from randomized clinical trials. So if you've done clinical trials, it's hard for the typical physician to be aware of what cannabis does, because that's what we're used to placing our faith in a treatment protocol. It has to show success in thousands of people. But the studies that have been done on Parkinson's clearly show a benefit. You may or may not have seen an age-old video of a guy who just couldn't eat. He had the shake so bad, and they gave him a joint. And 15 minutes later, the guy's, it's funny, the first comment he makes to the video crew is, can I make y'all some lunch? I mean, he looks at, have y'all seen that? Am I alone? Peter's seen it. I know it's out there on YouTube, like everything. But that's clearly what we do see. We know why people develop Parkinson's, and we know that it is an autoimmune phenomena. We know that it's associated with death of neurons, and there is the dementia that goes along with Parkinsonism, and that's what you're seeing as well.
So have any clinical studies been conducted in like the Netherlands, Canada, that we could rely on to change the opinions of our medical establishment and our politicians?
Great question. Yes, is the short answer. But most of us in the United States, we're research snobs. We think we're the only country to do good research. And I do think we do better research. We have stricter criteria for looking at the results of clinical protocols. But there are some protocols that have even been done in the United States, but they're using pretty lousy, low-quality cannabis that the government had a contract with the University of Mississippi to grow what people in the know would call ditchweed or dirtweed. I mean, it's pretty lousy quality. So the results for people who are in the cannabis industry, they feel it really can't be adequately judged. You guys may all remember, because I remember this going way back, that if you had glaucoma, the government would send you these cans of pre-rolled cannabis that were made from that University of Mississippi weed, and they saw the pressures come down in the eyes. Anybody else remember that? Yeah, it got pretty popular anyway.
When I was also interested in what Crystal was saying, but I heard you also say there's no real organization that would be as interested as, let's say, the pharmaceutical industry in testing in depth. Like Pfizer right now is doing massive studies on the different COVID things that they're playing around with. Is there an organization that would be interested in pursuing the research on the THC and the other things?
There are certainly some pharmaceutical industries who are interested in seeing if they can synthetically create molecules that exist in nature and leverage them for their therapeutic benefits. During my years with the Jacksonville Center for Clinical Research, we had protocols come through. There was one called Rimonabant that blocked the brain CB1 receptors, and the thinking was we can use this for people who have weight problems. The thinking was, well, THC gives you the munchies. This would be the anti-munchies. And what we found in that protocol is people had devastating emotional issues. I mean, some people developed suicidal thinking. They were very depressed, very anxious. So they shut down the research protocol. You can't neutralize the endocannabinoid system without paying a price for it. And in that case, fortunately, they stopped it before there's other negatives that could have occurred. But that goes along with a pharmaceutically initiated endocannabinoid deficiency. And cancer is one of those things that's felt to be an endocannabinoid deficiency, not to mention all the other serious conditions that are out there. So the synthetic extraction of products from the cannabis plant has notoriously failed for the most part. Either it's bad cannabis being used, or they just isolated a chemical away from the other 500 ingredients that are part of the cannabis plant. They call that the entourage effect, where the effects are greater from the sum of the products rather than just each individual product being extracted.
So their interest is in isolating something that can be patented as compared to research on a plant-based product that is available. And so that just to complete the question, there is no organization that would go and do a study on just a plant, or are there organizations?
I think there would be if it was legal. We've just got that barrier that keeps us from doing the studies.
The other thing about, just to tag on to that, the pharmaceutical companies are not interested in trying to redevelop or to make a medicine that does what, they want to make a medicine that does what cannabis does, but they don't want to take cannabis and use that as the basis of their medicine, because you can't patent a plant.
Right.
So they want to patent it. So they want to recreate the chemicals. And it was also tried in Israel. They tried to recreate working off the endocannabinoid system, ended up killing 5 people doing it. So, I mean, it's a very dangerous thing, obviously, to mess with the endocannabinoid. Cannabis already knows how to do it. So it's really kind of weird to recreate something that's perfected.
So I have an elderly relative who has 91, who has slowly gotten into heart failure. So like the ejections, whatever things,
Ejection
20
fraction.
to 30.
Yeah.
So would this benefit him at all?
I don't see any benefit with heart failure specifically.
No,
Have you read anything? Have you heard anything? I haven't specifically looked for that, Miriam, but I'm not aware of any benefits from a heart failure
And
standpoint.
what's happening is he's taking all these, drugs that are, this one to lower the blood pressure, this one to raise it, stop the AFib, all the stuff. And it's making him sick. It's
Sure.
making him even sicker and he's nervous. So I just don't know if it would be helpful even from a emotional standpoint.
Definitely has emotional benefits without conflicting with the medications that we traditionally use for heart failure,
So it
hypertension,
wouldn't-
et
So
cetera.
it wouldn't conflict.
No, in general. The only one, the conflicts that they write about are people who are on the real potent blood thinners, but you have to be taking more than 90 milligrams a day, which is a pretty hefty dose. So my dad was on one of those blood thinners and was on whopping doses, well in excess of 90 a day. Never had any bleeding complications from it for that small sample size. Question?
I have two questions. One is, does the deficiency in the android cannabinoid system precede whatever the medical condition is, or does the medical condition?
Chicken or the egg?
Which is the cart before the horse?
The thinking in the scientists that study this is the endocannabinoid deficiency came first. And the conditions, and there's a lot of them, are a result of the deficiency.
So would that necessarily lead to some type of extract, I guess, from the cannabis plant being used for medicinal purposes as a preventive medicine?
Well, we don't have that in the preventive world, although we do think for people that have a condition for which they can get certified for cannabis. I mean, you can't just come in and get certified because I want to prevent Alzheimer's or whatever, cancer, that sort of thing. But for people that have a condition, I personally feel that improving our immune system has lots of benefits. Certainly in a pandemic era, we've seen less severity of COVID cases and less hospitalizations in people using medical cannabis.
And could you comment on anything related to stroke victims?
There's a lot of evidence, and really more in the CBD world. And by the way, the CBD you can get over the counter is felt to be inferior to the ones that come from cannabis because those are derived from hemp. Doesn't have the same medical properties. Quick aside, there's a study that was published in our Journal of the American Medical Association, found that 69% of the over-the-counter products they studied didn't have what was on the label. And you're paying a pretty good amount for that. So true CBD derived from cannabis has shown clear benefits. Interesting part is, of the neurodegenerative problems that are out there, and that's the ALS, the Alzheimer's, the Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, et cetera, CBD has lots of benefits for things that are neurodegenerative. And there's evidence that traumatic brain injury, strokes, things like that benefit by having the cannabis on board. It reduces the oxidative stress on the neurons and something called excitotoxicity. It's a whole different complex. I won't get into that particular area. So yeah, we know that the cannabis helps for those sort of phenomena.
I want to get your thoughts on some things outside of the medical profession. We see ads in the paper for medical marijuana cards and all of this. Are these people that are just trying to take advantage of people or help stoners out? Not that that's wrong. But I mean, just your general thoughts on that aspect of the marijuana industry.
I have plenty of thoughts. I don't think I want to share them here. We're in it for, I'm a physician. We want to treat medical problems. I would be bored to tears if all I saw were people who just wanted to get a buzz. I have nothing wrong with somebody getting a buzz while they're treating them.
Like I said, there's nothing wrong.
It's a safer happy hour in that regard. But if that's the sole purpose, no, I'm lost interest. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a friend who's dealt with Crohn's disease for years and has seen huge benefits from using the medicinal cannabis, huge benefits. My question is, I know you were talking about CBD derived from the marijuana plant versus from hemp. And so all of these products, I have friends that use these tinctures to help them sleep at night, things like that. But most of those, that's just CBD. There's no THC in it, right?
Depends.
I mean, most of the over-the-counter ones that you.
All the over the
All the
counter, there's
over-the-counter
no
ones.
THC in there to speak of. There might be a tiny amount,
But just
but in
trace.
general.
So where's your supply from? Like what the products that you supply, where?
We don't actually supply any products at
don't?
all. We just do the medical cannabis certification. Once people get certified, go to a dispensary and Peter gives them expert advice on what to get from
I didn't
dispensaries.
realize if there was a connection or
Yeah, products out of a dispensary are tested twice by the company that made it, whether it's a True Leaf or wherever, and an outside agency, so you know that you're getting exactly what it says on the label. We don't have that problem like the over-the-counter CBD. But I see a hand over here as well. I'll come back.
I think we have time. One more question.
Yes, sir.
Just curious, I know in the past, they've tried to, get the limit off of licenses for dispensaries and things like that. Do you see anything in the future legislatively that will open it up to more business opportunities?
Say that again, they're limiting what?
They originally limited the amount of licenses for dispensaries.
Yes.
Is that going to be something that you see would change?
Yeah, there actually is written in the laws that every 100,000 patients that would come on board the system, they were supposed to open four more dispensary licenses, 4 more. And, and they haven't done that. We've got now 615,000 patients in Florida, and they haven't done that. So they're kind of backlogged of what they should be doing. I heard there was 9 about to be released, but I heard that 6 months ago. So they are supposed to, I guess is the answer, but they haven't. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of dispensaries out there, and a lot of dispensaries have multi-locations, but the more dispensaries we bring on, the lower the cost will get as they get into some competitive.
It just seems like, there is a business portion to this industry. It seems like there's no room for startup without significant amounts of capital outside of, starting and getting a license. You could be a craft brewery, start with low cost, low overhead, and build a business. It seems like that pathway for medical cannabis does not exist due to that license.
No, it's amazing. It's to even just get a license with the state, it's a non-refundable $68,000 that you have to give them. But what's happening? A lot of people went initially and they got those licenses and they just flip them. Like they've been sold. AltMed bought one out, which is moved. Well, Truly bought, for 2.1 billion. But the licenses like AltMed ended up paying $50 million for their license. So there's several people that are doing that. I want to go back to just what you had said about what the differences are between a lot of people getting into this business. One thing that we're doing that we decided to do differently is we provide education, dosing, and guidance and support. I don't see how anybody's getting better these days. A lot of people are doing this business, they certify, and you're on your own. And unless you have someone that's experienced, that knows what to take and knows how to tell you what to take, you won't fix that Crohn's disease or delay the ALS or have the success and the results,
Dosing thing could be scary for people if they don't know the milligrams that they're consuming. It can be a really bad experience for somebody versus being a therapeutic experience. So that's
very
important to, don't eat a whole 100 milligram whatever.
Well, it's also what to get, as far as there's a lot of times a THC product is not what you get. It's a CBD product or a combination of ratios, so that any number of conditions require a different type of, design. So
nobody else in this room would interrupt you today. I regret that I have to bring our meeting to a close.
Sounds good. One quick note.
Please.
I write tons of articles in the education section of our BoorasMD.com website. Plenty of room in there if y'all want to enhance your knowledge further. Feel free to email us. Happy to answer questions that way.
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. As we thank you, and I'd also like to let you know that in your names, we are making a small donation to the Rotary Foundation to end polio. Let's see. Next week, our speaker will be Andy Kaufman, the owner of the Jacksonville Iceman. And meeting, please join me in our membership motto. Each one bring one. Let's try it again. Each one bring one. Excellent. Thank you.
That's gonna take some practice.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's difficult.